All right, it's time to make a video about one of the most important questions. How much does it cost to live in Vancouver, Washington? Is it dirt cheap? Are they just giving the houses away? Or do you have to make $1 million a year? Well, that's what we're going to talk about all through this video as I take you on the waterfront walkway along the beautiful Columbia River. Right behind me, you've got that little bridge that takes you over to the state of Oregon, and we are going to stroll along the Washington side of the Columbia River as we talk all about the cost of living here in Vancouver, Washington. Are you ready to join me? Let's go. Hey everybody, it's your host here once again, Dave Baker, with the Moving to Washington team. Now, if this is your first time on the channel, you know what to do, right? You just tap that little subscribe button and you click that little bell so you'll be notified every time I put out a new video all about living, working, eating, sleeping, playing, and taking a stroll on the beautiful Columbia River right here in Vancouver, Washington. Now, if you're thinking about moving here, whether you're thinking about moving anywhere in the Southwest Washington area or in the Portland, Oregon region, you've got to reach out to us. All you have to do is send me an email, send me a text message. You can give me a call on the phone, seriously, 24/7, because our team is passionate about helping you come out here and relocate to Vancouver, Washington, and all the awesome cities around here, like Camas, Washougal, Ridgefield, Battleground, you name it, we want to help you. All right, so let's start taking our stroll here along the river. In case you want to follow along on the map, I am on the Columbia River Renaissance Trail. That is on the water, but don't mix this up with the Vancouver waterfront, which is just on the other side of Highway 5, which is straight ahead of us. That's the bridge that you often see me talk about, or you see in the photos, that divides Oregon and Washington along the Columbia River. All right, so it's a little bit foggy out today, which is unique because as I was driving through Vancouver, I noticed the fog is only here on the river. And that's something that got my attention because I don't generally have a lot of days that I can remember where there was fog pouring through the city. So this is a really unique day, and I thought it was a cool day to film this video. Okay, so let's start diving in and talking about some of the costs of living here in Vancouver, Washington. Now, if you're thinking about moving here, it's likely that you've also been looking at living in Portland, Oregon. So the first thing I want to touch on is that when comparing the costs of many things inside of Portland versus Vancouver, the first thing you want to remember is that, of course, Oregon has no sales tax, but they have a high income tax. They're one of the highest income taxes in the country. Here in Washington, there is no income tax. And I know this has been mentioned many times, but when I'm thinking about my cost of living, well, we're thinking about your cost of living now, right? So let's talk about this. If you're moving from a high tax state or you have a higher income, having no income tax can save you quite a bit of money. It's pretty exciting. Now, there are some other taxes on people's income. Recently, there was a capital gains tax that was passed. I believe it's only on a certain type of capital gains, and that might not affect all of you. So do keep that in mind when you're thinking about your income tax. But generally speaking, there is no personal income tax here in the state of Washington, and that's a big deal. If you were living over across the river and you had 10% income tax or more, perhaps, based on where you live, that's pretty significant. So I wanted to get that out of the way first and address the whole Portland versus Vancouver situation because it does come up quite a bit. All right, now let's talk about the basics, right? First, we have to talk about things like utilities, like gas for your car, things like that. Generally speaking, there aren't any utilities that really stand out here in the same way they would like if you were living in a place like, say, Las Vegas, where you have to run your air conditioner for hundreds of dollars in the winter. Or if you were living in a snowy place, like if you're looking at Boise, Idaho, and comparing that to Vancouver, Washington, you'd have that cold part of the year where you'd have to be running your heater constantly. So here, obviously, the Pacific Northwest is known for having rain, right? But that doesn't mean it's always freezing outside. So you might not have to run a heater 24 hours a day just to live. So you don't have that same potential exposure on your utilities. That's something to consider. Additionally, there are some people here that have solar, which kind of caught my attention because it's gray quite often here. There's a significant number of gray days per year. Now that doesn't mean it rains every day, but that does mean that the sun is not out. So I do want you to keep that in mind. Next, let's talk what I mentioned about earlier here, which was gas. Now, I would say that based on the data I've seen, I looked at some comparisons between different states, and here, being on the West Coast, gas is a little bit more expensive for your car. If you're coming from California, well, I mean, that's a whole different discussion, right? Because gas there has so many taxes and it's just so expensive. But if you're coming from Texas, where I generally hear that gas is, quite a bit cheaper, and I've looked at the data, if you're coming from states like that, yeah, it's going to be much different. Right now, as I make this video, I've been watching gas prices, and they're between $3.75 for the regular, up to over $4 for premium gas. Now, of course, that depends where you go. You've got a lot of options, of course. If you have a membership at one of these, stores, you're going to get price breaks and things like that. And of course, you do have Costco here, which has gas often at a reduced price. But it's more expensive than what I've seen in the South. So I did want to mention that because this is a driving town. Unless you live in downtown, you'll probably have to use your car for a lot of services. Okay, let's talk about the next item on the list. And that is going to be property taxes. Now, here's what gets my attention. This gets my attention a lot, okay? I'm hearing about people moving to Florida. I'm hearing about people moving to Texas. And they talk about the price of their houses and how much money they're going to save. Well, hold on a second. In some of those places, property taxes can be very high. Here in Vancouver, which, as a reminder, is in Clark County, the average property tax rate, and I always say this with a grain of salt, don't quote me on this because it can change based on your house, but I was reading the average property tax rate is approximately 1.19%. So it's not super high like you hear about in some places. For example, when I think about Texas and Florida, well, those are great places to live because they also have no income tax, but their property tax is quite high. And I think that's a big factor for a lot of people. Let me give you an example as I take you on the water over here a different way. Let's say, for example, you buy a house that costs $600,000. Well, if the property tax is around 1 and some odd percent, well, keep in mind that that means that you'd be paying somewhere around $6,000 to $7,000 a year. But imagine if you live in a state where it's 2 or 3%. You could be looking at $18,000 a year in property taxes, right? That is a significant difference when you're looking at a home. And that could actually affect your affordability for your home. So again, that's something that you'll want to look at. And it's something you can discuss with the team, when you're looking for your home. What are the property taxes estimated to be? Don't forget, they can change over time, right? Taxes do get adjusted. Things overall are just kind of going up, so that's something you have to deal with. All right, so since we're talking about housing, let's talk about the cost of housing here in Vancouver, Washington. What is the deal with that? All right. First of all, I always like to say something that's probably very obvious, but I just want to mention it. It depends where you want to live and what type of home you want, okay? People will say things like, well, I read that the median home price is $450,000. And I think to myself, okay, sure, that's possible. Now, I'm using that as an example. I did recently read that number once again, that the median home prices are around $450,000. That's constantly fluctuating. So you have to look at your specific situation. The first thing I like to do is take a look at homes that are around the median home price and ask myself, hey, do I want to live in that home? And that could be anywhere you want to live. Is that the type of home that you see that's right for you. Now, you do have flexibility here, because what's cool is that you have single family homes, you have duplexes, you have townhouses, and you do have condos here. And so you have a lot of options. And I think that's really important. I always like to mention that because I know people are looking for different things. But overall, when you're comparing this to other states, generally speaking, if you're looking at major cities in California, it's going to be cheaper here in Vancouver, Washington. If you're looking at Portland, Oregon, again, it depends what part of town you live in, because if you live in the Pearl District in Portland, you could be looking at $1 million condos, and you could come here and find a single family home that's, $400 to $700 that you like. So it's an interesting comparison. If you're coming from the Midwest, like let's say you're coming from Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Arkansas is unique because it's booming right now. Again, that's going to give you a comparison where those homes are going to be generally, the median homes will be lower priced than here in Washington. I read a lot of different studies, and again, take all the numbers with a grain of salt, because they're based on so many different factors, and they're based on, median home prices and things like that, which might not actually be the homes that you want to live in. But I was reading that it's about 19% to 20% more expensive for the average home here than in other places. But what does that mean? Does that mean you're getting a brand new house and you're only paying 20% more? I mean, is that what they're comparing? Maybe, but that's not what I see. For example, here in Washington, there are a lot of older homes. Now, I'm speaking about Southwest Washington, but really, no matter where you go, whether you go all the way up to the Canadian border, you might see homes that were built, more than 100 years ago. That doesn't mean you're only going to find homes that are built in the early 1900s, but I just want to mention that. So sometimes people say to me, well, I'm looking at a home that was, $500,000, but it was built 60 years ago. And they'll say something like, well, I can get a home in Pennsylvania that was built 20 years ago and it's half the price. But what they don't tell you is that here you have a place that's highly accessible, where you have all the stores, shops, all the things you're looking for, very conveniently located. And then they show me a home in Pennsylvania that's like a rural home that's 20 miles from a supermarket. So it all depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking to be more secluded, or you don't even want to be in Vancouver proper itself, and you want to be out in Ridgefield or Battleground, or you want to go to Camas or Washougal, maybe you want to move up to Hazeldale, which has got some new shopping centers and a little bit of growth going on too. Yeah, you're going to have different opportunities. On the other side of the coin, maybe you want to live in Camas, but you want to live right on the water. Well, guess what? If you want to live on the Columbia River and you want to have a dock, that could be $2 million. So we have to narrow down your situation. So when you reach out to us, when you send an email or send a text message, give me an idea what you're looking for so the team can work on something that's right for you, right? A home is personal. It's got to cater to your needs. It's got to meet the requirements that you have. We're going to turn around right now, by the way, because I want to show you Vancouver Beach. It's just an area down here on the Columbia River, and I want to take you down there so that you can see what it looks like. It's just cool to have that. It's a nice place to just kind of lay out. Something that's really cool, by the way, is that these rivers up here in the Northwest, you've got the Columbia River behind us, of course, and then you have the Willamette River down in Oregon. They both have beaches people go to. And so if you're worried about missing out on the water, like if you're leaving a coastal area, East Coast, West Coast, on the South, wherever you're moving, if you're moving from Alabama to here in Washington, whatever it is, you do have water. And I know for a lot of people, that's really important. It's come up a lot. People don't want to be landlocked in some cases. Not everyone cares, but I know it's a factor for some people. Okay, let's talk about another quick item I do want to mention. Washington State does have sales tax. Now, you may have read online that the sales tax in the state is 6.5%. While that might be the state sales tax, keep in mind different counties can add additional sales taxes. And you are benefiting from no income tax, so you are going to have that cost. Now, where does that cost apply? Well, it applies to a lot of things. If you go to a restaurant and get dinner, you're going to pay sales tax. If you buy a car, you're going to pay sales tax. That is something that people mention in different states. There are states that have unique tax situations. For example, I remember this one time I was traveling in New Jersey. I think I was in maybe Ocean City or Seaside Heights, somewhere in that neighborhood, and I bought some clothing and they didn't charge sales tax. And I thought they'd made a mistake. And what I learned was there was no sales tax on clothing in New Jersey. And that really caught my attention. I thought that was very interesting. All right. I want to retouch on one thing that we talked about for a second. I want to jump back to talking about utilities. There's something that might come up if you're moving from the East Coast, and that is a question about heating oil. Well, here in Washington, you're more likely to have a furnace that is either gas or electric. And one additional thing I do want to mention is that older homes might not have air conditioning. So that's something to consider. You might have to install an air conditioner. If you're interested in that, not everyone cares, but you know, the weather's changing and it can get warmer. But you do, of course, have the option not to have central air. But newer homes are being built with air conditioning. So just keep that in mind. It's not a factor for everyone, but I did want to mention it because I know that it comes up from time to time. Next on the list, I want to talk about the cost of entertainment. This is really going to vary based on what you like to do. If you watch my videos, you know that I like to eat out. It's not always an option because, you know, places had been closed, but as things have opened more and more and more, and you have all these spots reopening and then new places opening, I'm kind of back in the eating out groove. So I want to talk about that for a second. What's it like to eat out here in terms of costs? I would say that it's fairly average. Now, that's not a specific piece of data, but that's based on a take from someone who's eaten out at a lot of restaurants. If you're comparing dining out, going to bars, or going to any type of nightlife to a big city, then this is going to seem very reasonable. I remember being in California and seeing drinks at certain establishments costing $15 or more. I'm talking about something very simplistic, costing $15. That same comparable beverage here, I had seen on menus for $6 to $8. So that right there got my attention. This is, again, just a personal experience example. But when I think of big cities, again, well, let's talk about West Coast cities, right? Because you might be looking at West Coast cities. If you're looking at San Francisco, you're looking at all the different parts of Los Angeles, Orange County and the hot cities like Newport Beach and Laguna Beach, whether you're looking actually anywhere in the Bay Area, not just San Francisco. Or if you're comparing Seattle, Washington, of course, which is up in the north, or Portland, Oregon down there, I have to say, overall, the cost of dining out here is quite reasonable. I did mention that there is sales tax when you dine out, but as compared to a big city, I would say things here are definitely cheaper when you're talking about that. But let's talk about something else that I really love about Washington and the Pacific Northwest in general. And that is all the free stuff you can do outdoors. You've got the hiking, the biking, the trails that have been built for your convenience and usability and livability, right? You've got national parks. You've got state parks. There are a ton of beautiful places here to go outdoors. You have lakes, and there are a lot of lakes, okay? I mean, you've got Camas Lake, of course, right over there. You've got the Columbia River behind me. Right now, we're strolling down to what they call Vancouver Beach. These are all things that are free. And this is something that has become a bigger part of my life, and I'm hearing it more and more. In fact, I was just talking to someone who told me that she had really changed what her definition of having fun was. Now she's taking walks with her kids, and they go down to the water, and they go stand-up paddle boarding, and they do kayaking, things that they never did before. And that is something that I personally have experienced as well. I used to spend a lot more time indoors. I used to think about going out to eat all the time, specifically as entertainment. That was something I looked forward to in a different way. And while I still enjoy eating out, now during the day, I will take advantage of some of the beautiful things that are offered here. And, you know, in all the places that I travel to, I'm taking advantage of very different things. I mean, I bought hiking boots. I got these jackets you can see in some of the videos. You'll notice that now I'm wearing hiking pants like regularly. It's pretty, it's been a big change for me to get more outdoorsy stuff. And I've really enjoyed it. So look, it makes me smile talking about it. I look forward to coming to beautiful places like this. I mean, I'm standing on the Columbia River. Let's look at some of the guests that are here with us. Yep, it's a raft of ducks. There are so many cute little ducks throughout all the waterways here that I just love to see it. It's just so amazing. I'm gonna do a quick pause because I just wanna show you the sun going down behind the bridge right now. There's actually another person photographing it right now. He's got a really fancy lens. I see a lot of that here too. People come out and they take pictures, they have like camera setups. It's pretty cool. And that just shows, how they appreciate this outdoor stuff. So I like to call this free outdoor entertainment. Now, there's one other thing I like to mention when I talk about entertainment and going out, and that is something that comes from me specifically because I have lived in places where there is this added cost that always I don't find enjoyable, and that is parking. Vancouver, Washington does not have a lot of paid parking. Yes, of course, if you go to the downtown area, right on Main Street, there's paid parking, but you can find free parking off of Main Street, off of Columbia. What if you're over at the Vancouver waterfront, which is, the beautiful new development? Yeah, they're gonna have some paid parking, but I constantly find free parking. And a lot of the parking is free after 6 p.m. But throughout the rest of the city, that is not a concern, okay? And I bring that up because if you think about going out in big cities, well, what happens is you have to factor in the parking. I mean, have you seen the cost of parking in Las Vegas lately? I mean, it's like blowing my mind. I had someone telling me that they had to pay, I believe it was in Boston, they had to pay like $35 or $40 to park for a day. I just can't believe it. And that's such an expense, especially when you're going out. And I remember all the trips I've taken to places like New York City or Philadelphia or other places on the East Coast. Those are things that you have to factor in. If you're coming from California, you know all about paying for parking. But here, it's not really a big deal. Now, let's talk about one more thing that involves parking, or maybe not parking your own vehicle, and that's going to be transportation. Is there a public transportation system here? My answer is going to be yes, with the caveat that it might not be super convenient for everything you want to do. One thing that I've really been noticing here is that they're sprucing up the bus stops. There's a modernization going on. Now, if public transportation is a number one priority for you and you want to live 100% without a car, well, then you're going to head across that river right there. And we're going to have the team talk to you about a place in Portland, Oregon, because that's a place where you can live without a car. In Vancouver, it's feasible. I have talked to people who do it. For me, I think it's a little too inconvenient, even though there is a bus system. The bus system is more logical than a lot of other places. The most confusing bus systems I've ever seen were in places like Los Angeles, where the buses go in all these circles and you can't figure out what's going on. It's like you have to be some kind of math wizard to understand how to get somewhere. Now, when you look at places like Portland, they have a very well mapped out bus system. Here, you do have the C-Trans system. You do have opportunities for public transportation, but I do think a car is going to be an expense when you live here. You won't be able to just completely live without a car unless you live in a few dedicated areas and you happen to work there too. Now, if you work remotely or you work from home and you want to live, just outside the downtown or next to a shopping center where you can go to the supermarket, that's different. But let's factor that in on your potential expenses. All right, so those are some of the top expenses that are part of the consideration for living here in Vancouver, Washington, and really all of Southwest Washington. The real deal for a lot of people, and I mean deal by savings, is that there's no income tax. That's a huge savings for so many people, especially if you're already paying like 10% or more. So that's a big consideration. But overall, the other items that I touched on are all considerations when you're moving somewhere. And I think they're generally quite favorable because I've looked at utility bills from a lot of different places. And when I see these extreme winter and summer utility bills, that's what really gets my attention. When I hear someone say, oh yeah, I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, and guess what? I've got my electric bill down to just, $500 a month in the summer. I'm like, sticker shock, hello. Or I'll hear people tell me about heating oil on the East Coast. And then there was that situation that happened in Texas when things froze over. So, There are a lot of different things that are different priorities for different people. And overall, for me, I keep asking myself, when I'm looking for a house, when I'm thinking about where to live, what is the place that's going to make me the happiest overall? That's what I want to have. And I'm thinking that might be what you want to have, but I don't know. So drop a comment below. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you're looking for when you're thinking about moving somewhere and when you're trying to decide what's important to you. Tell me all about it. I want to hear about it. So if you are thinking about moving out here to Vancouver, Washington, or across that river behind me, then you know what to do. I want you to reach out, okay? Send me an email, send me a text message. Forgot how to text for a second there. Give me a call on the phone. And when you reach out, send some information. Make sure to include your contact information, like your phone number. Make sure to include your email address if you contact me a different way. And tell me about what you're looking for. Throw a little bit out there about your wants, your needs, possibly your budget, what kind of house you want, and the team will be excited to help you. If you want, did you know you can actually click the link in the description and schedule a call with us? That's another way to just get on the calendar and get the ball rolling. All right, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed another video all about Vancouver, Washington, and I cannot wait to see you in the next video. I'm going to leave you now as we walk back directly to the Columbia River, and I'm going to let you enjoy this beautiful sunset as it comes down over the bridge. All right, everybody, until the next video, take care and enjoy the scenery here.